Good evening. I'm Ruth Rose, a member of the Adult Programs Committee at First Parish. I'm delighted to welcome Chris Hess to our occasional Tuesday speaker series. Chris has been an active member of First Parish for many years now, serving on the parish board and various committees. He and his wife, Jennifer, led a popular Sunday morning short story discussion group, which many people would like to see repeated. Chris was also an immensely popular youth group leader who left that post only when his daughters joined the youth group, because really, Dad? You may also remember Chris's story about fly fishing for Voices on the Green, his uncanny ability to increase the bids at FP auctions, and the simple suppers and dessert extravaganzas that Jennifer and he have offered at said auctions. And of course, Chris is a mainstay of the choir, singing bass and tenor as needed, and usually not at the same time. As you know, Rip Jackson, our beloved music director, selects the music for our virtual anthems, rehearses us, no mean feat, on Zoom, plays any accompaniment needed, and records his conducting. We're here tonight because Chris is the techno wizard behind the virtual anthem videos, making some of us sound better than we do in real life. And I speak from personal experience. Chris will explain how he works his magic without, choir members dearly hope, embarrassing anyone too much. Chris has also developed an interesting sideline outside of First Parish. He has started consulting to clients, including the Hallelujah singers, on creating virtual choir pieces. So tell your friends. We are recording Chris's talk tonight for those who can't watch and for those who want to take careful notes. So now here is Chris to demonstrate why he's such a valuable consultant. Chris.
Thank you, Ruth. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. Slow night in Lexington, I guess. I don't know. Let's talk about virtual choirs. Let me see if I can share my screen. That would be a good start. Optimize for video. Okay. Omar, I trust you'll tell me if it's not being shared. Okay, welcome to Backstage at the Virtual Choir. This is how First Parish in Lexington sang together when we couldn't be together. So how we're going to work is I'm going to talk about virtual choirs in general. Then we're going to talk about preparing for a particular virtual choir piece. Then we'll talk about recording, and then how I put it together, and then we'll take some Q&A. I'm also going to take a few questions at the end of each section, just in case there's somebody's got a burning issue that they want to clarify. So to start sort of at the beginning, on March 10th of 2020, the Skagit Valley Chorale, which is a large community choir in the Washington state near Seattle, held a choir rehearsal with 62 members, including someone who was infected with COVID and communicable. 52 members got COVID and 2 died. And that is news that sort of tore through the choral singing community online, and everybody knew about it. On, I think, the 23rd of March, the governor declared that there was a stay-at-home order for Massachusetts. And so around that time, I think I and everybody else in the choir and related to First Parish was concerned that we were going to, the church was going to go on hold. And I was particularly concerned that without an opportunity to perform, that choir was going to be basically suspended indefinitely. So sort of around the 1st of April, Rip and I started talking about the possibility of doing a virtual choir. And I don't actually remember exactly what got us going. Some people had posted virtual choirs to the choir email list. And at some point, I think Rip said, "Is this something we might be able to do?" And I hadn't really thought about it. But it occurred to me that in January, I had built a very powerful personal computer to play violent video games. And that might be a good computer to do this kind of work, sort of heavy processing for video and audio. So in early April, I threw together a truly crude guide track for a song called Cucho, which is a Sesotho, short Sesotho song that we had learned, and I think we had sung in Germany the previous summer. And I basically, this was kind of separate from the official choir. I just asked everybody if some of them might be willing to be guinea pigs for a test, essentially, to see if this technology would work. And I was hoping we would get one voice from each part. So 4 total people. I got 20 volunteers. And I was, I was giddy, but then I was like, oh God, now I have to actually do this. So that was kind of how it all got started. All right, now I'm going to talk about the slides that I actually made. So a virtual choir is just a video. It's like any other video that you would see on YouTube or TV or stream on Netflix or anywhere else. It's just pictures and sounds. Basically what happens is an ensemble, and in our case singers, but also instrumentalists, record themselves separately, typically on their phones, and send in their videos to an editor, in this case me, who puts that together into both a video presentation and an audio mix. And the video and the audio together basically make up the virtual choir. I don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence, but I need to say it. Virtual choirs are not live, and there's nothing live about them. And over the last year, I've periodically had people say to me, how do you sound so good on Zoom, or how does that Zoom choir work? It's not Zoom. It's completely canned. At the time that it's played over Zoom, it has been recorded and edited together. So it's a video, and it's a saved video file. Okay. So why make a virtual choir? Obviously, if you can't sing together, it's a great way to sing together, even if you can't be in the same space. And because the files can be shared easily online, they're easy to share, they're easy to customize, they're easy to watch repeatedly if you want to, and they can be viewed anywhere that there's an internet connection. So it's a great sort of way to promote and do outreach for your ensemble. So let's talk about what makes a good choir performance, right? You want everyone singing together in parts. You want them to be in tune. You want them to be in time with each other. And then there's a whole bunch of tone and pronunciation and tempo and dynamics, all of which, dictated by the conductor and rehearsed by the conductor. To make it be, a coherent, powerful thing. You want to connect with the audience, right? You want to have that sort of human connection with people who are in the audience looking at you and hearing you, and you can see them and hear them and see their reactions. And you want to, a great choir performance is typically in a beautiful environment with comfortable seating and good acoustics, and you might have live accompaniment. And I think that, the shared experience of the audience is great. So all of that, I think, goes into a great choir performance. But what happens when the choir can't hear or see each other, the choir can't hear or see the conductor, and the choir can't see or hear the audience? All those lovely things that I just talked about that make a good choir performance basically are very hard to do. But they're not impossible. And so my job as somebody who puts a virtual choir together is basically to put the choir back in the same room, despite the fact that they're not in the same room, right? To get the singers synced up, obviously in time and in tune with each other. But then also, to kind of the special sauce is to like try to put back some of what's lost. And through various tricks, I say tricks, that sort of trivializes it, but through various strategies and digital tools to try to inject back into the performance some of what you lose because you're not in the same place. All right, so that's kind of my definition of a virtual choir. And if there are questions now about the definition of virtual choir specifically and kind of how we got started, I could take 2 or 3.
So can I jump in here and say, if
Yeah.
anyone does have any questions, could you please use the reactions button, which is at the bottom of your screen, and there should be a raise hand option there. If anyone has a question.
And if we don't, I'll just carry on.
Chris, should you stop sharing though, so we can see whether
So
there are...
Liz and Ewan and Richard have a question. Oh, whoops!
They look muted.
I need to let them unmute.
What editing software do you use?
So I use a bunch of stuff, mainly Adobe Premiere Pro. And I've used a number of tools for audio, but I have settled on an image line product called FL Studio. That's a good question. Thank you. Five, four, three, two, one. Okay.
No more questions.
Let me reshare. All right. So, preparing for virtual choir video. Obviously, Rip chooses the music and Rip rehearses the choir for a great song. I set up the technical specifications. Honestly, this is something I really only did once. So once the technical specs are set, we've used them on all the virtual choirs we've done since then. I'll talk a little bit more about the project schedule, but that's basically Rip with a little input from me. I wrote an extensive set of instructions for the singers, which they'll probably laugh at, but I think it went 3 or 4 pages for how to get a great recording when you're singing to your phone. Then Rip and the instrumentalists will record audio of their accompaniment. So whatever their parts are, they record and send to me. Rip makes a video of himself conducting, typically as he's listening to the accompaniment that has already been recorded. And then I create a guide track. Omar has also created guide tracks with input from Rip and with audio and video from the section leaders. And those guide tracks are sort of what makes this all possible. If you think about how hard it would be to sing in tune and in time when you're not in the same place. So the guide tracks have an audio and a video component, obviously. The audio is the instrumental accompaniment, the section leader's vocals, a click track if we have one. It depends sort of whether or not we're singing at a set tempo. Sometimes a click track can work. Sometimes you just have to follow the conductor. And then conductor audio. Sometimes Rip will, speak while he's conducting and, bring people up, bring people down, give us warnings about somebody's about to do an entry, whatever. And then on the video side, it's a video of Rip conducting, video of the section leader singing, video of the score, the actual pages of the score with page turns, and then an occasional inspirational text message from our editor. So let's see some, and I'm hoping that this will play and someone will tell me if it doesn't.
May you see God's light on the path ahead when the road you walk is dark. May you always hear, even in your hour of sorrow, the gentle singing of the lark.
Okay, so that was the first soprano guide track for You Do Not Walk Alone. And so all the first sopranos would watch that video while they were practicing. I also make video guide tracks. No, there we go. Which have all the parts. So I'll give you a quick example of that.
May you see God's light on the path ahead when the road you walk is dark. May you always hear, even in your hour of sorrow, the gentle singing of the lark.
Okay. So I hope you can get a sense for how somebody might be able to sing along with that and have a sense that they were singing in an ensemble. And people in the choir are free to record either with and rehearse with either their part guide or with the combined guide that has everybody. Personally, I practice with the bass part guide track or the tenor part guide track if I'm singing tenor. And then when I perform, I tend to prefer to use the blended thing so that the all parts guide track. So in terms of, I've already started making videos at this point, right? I've made one for every part. If the song is SATB, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, I'll make 4 guide tracks for those, and I'll make one blended track, so that's 5. If it's SSAATTBB, I might make 9. So there's already videos being made in that situation. Okay, so once I have the guide tracks, I make the packet, and the packet is really just an email that goes to all the singers. It includes links to all the guide tracks. We post the guide tracks on YouTube. Instructions for recording and submitting files, those haven't changed much in the 10 months. The score for the piece in PDF form, the deadline for submitting files, that's important, and possibly inspiring words from your editor. And I mean, it's a joke, right? But so sometimes it's sort of in response to things that we've seen before. Some people are frantic to end their video recording. And so I've had to ask, please just take 3 seconds after you stop singing and stay on the screen, just so that I have a little bit of leeway when I'm doing the video recording or when I'm doing the video editing and everybody's not blacking out suddenly. Okay, so let's talk about the virtual choir project schedule. This all gets driven essentially by the debut date, which comes from the worship calendar. So Rip will say, I'd like to debut this piece on this Sunday. And at that point, I start working backwards from there and we figure out when to do things. So basically, I need all the singer files a week before the debut. And I do both the audio and the video mix in that last week. And I review it with Rip and make whatever changes he wants. 2 weeks before the debut date, we have to get the packet to the choir so that they have a week to do their recordings. You back up another week and then you're at recording guide tracks. So, and 4 weeks before the debut date, we're prepping the first bits of the guide tracks. So it's basically a month lead time. Okay, so if there are any questions about the preparation stuff, we could take a few now.
Looks like Deb Weiner-Soul.
Chris, this is terrific, and thank you so much. I am wondering if you could talk about click tracks and why you would use them or not. And also, my other question, as was mentioned at the beginning, you've done some editing for other groups, and I sing in one of those other groups. And I'm wondering if you could talk about the preference of a director for cueing the singers and signaling to the editor how to sync everybody up, specifically the idea of one choir asking singers to clap at the beginning of recording and why you would or would not do that. I know that was a complicated two questions, but see what you can do. Thank you.
Right. I will, thanks for coming, Deb. I will answer your second question first and your first question second. Okay, so the clap and the syncing is interesting. In theory, it's a great idea, and I know that big virtual choir projects use it. My experience is that I have to sync manually anyway, because often the claps don't land on the beat. And I'll probably get into this a little bit, but the way I actually sync is I will look for an obvious. I like B's, the syllable, the consonant B, because it's really easy to see exactly where it comes in a video. And I will tag at the beginning of a particular word in the song, I will tag everybody's video at that exact moment that they make that B. I'll tag them all, and then I'll just tell my video editing machine to sync all the tags. And that gives me a very accurate sync at that point. And there's obviously, that doesn't mean the whole thing is synced, but it's a good starting place. Your first question was about click tracks. Obviously, if the song is not being performed at a constant tempo, that's kind of a non-starter. What I would say is that if you have to do a simple guide track, for example, we did for Cuccio, I wasn't going to do a conducting video. So there had to be some way to convey the tempo, and a click track was the easy way to do it. That I put a click track on it and everybody could hear it, and it was an a cappella piece, so the actual guide track audio went away, and so the click track wasn't on the performance, and it worked. So that's it.
Let's see. Marshall looks like he's next.
Hey, Marshall.
Hello. This question may actually be more for Rip, but what I've heard is you've got a 4-week development timeline. How does that fit with a traditional rehearsal schedule?
I mean, Rip can tell me if it feels hard or not, but it doesn't feel difficult to me. We typically are rehearsing. I mean, actually, am I about to lie to you? I think we've gotten into the habit of rehearsing things a lot earlier than we had in the past. For this reason, because we know that there's kind of a handoff around week, debut -3, where we really kind of have to be ready. And that's probably not as much the case when we're singing live, that we might prep a piece later in the schedule. So, and it's probably a better question for Rip. It has not been a problem for me, but that's because of good planning on the part of Rip and Reverend Ann. Okay.
I think that's it.
Sally Forth.
Hey, Chris, do you want me to chime in a little bit?
Sure.
First of all, it's great to see you, Marshall. I agree with Chris. It's kind of elongated our rehearsal schedule to incorporate the technological elements of it. So, and also having to prepare all the singers so that they feel confident about it. It's very different because we're not able to rehearse in real time. So I think we add about a month onto the schedule. So thanks, Chris. You're doing a great job.
Okay, here I am sharing again. I hope I'm not oversharing. Okay, so now we're going to talk about making singer recordings. So this is each singer recording themselves, probably in their home on their cell phone. So each singer practices. I mean, we obviously, as Rip just said, we practice well in advance. Typically it has been over Zoom. But then when the guide tracks are distributed, links to the guide tracks are distributed, people can then practice with the guide tracks. So then each singer is basically responsible to set up their own sort of home studio. And especially with the early virtual choirs, that I think was a source of some consternation, because we didn't really have strong, we didn't have like a defined way to set up your studio. So people were coming up with all kinds of ways to, hold their tablet near their phone so that they could look near their phone while they were singing. And there was duct tape involved and zip ties and all kinds of things. So each singer will record takes of their performance while listening to the guide track on an earbud, because the guide track cannot come through in their recorded audio, because that would make mixing nightmarish. So we have to isolate their singing from the guide tracks. That's why they have an earbud in all, if you've noticed, in all the virtual choirs. So then they would listen to the takes that they record and upload them to me. And that, again, was another thing that was kind of difficult at the beginning, because we didn't really, these files are gigantic. They're 300, I mean, they could be 300, 400 megabytes. And you typically can't attach it to an email. So we came up with ways to take care of that. So the studios, basically you have to keep your cell phone steady. You need a device to play the guide track, typically a laptop or a tablet, earbuds to listen, and then lighting and environment, right? So you want to be well lit. You don't want to be backlit, because you'll start looking shadowy. And so that's a whole thing too. You typically don't want to record in a room with high ceilings and nothing on the walls. Like, the more padding and things to absorb reflection, the better, so it doesn't sound boomy or echoey. So setting up the singer studio is kind of it's a big deal, and everybody sort of has to do it for themselves. But I think after we did it a few times, people got the hang of it. So this slide is a placeholder. I don't want to gloss over the fact that the individual singer's recording process is probably the most uncomfortable piece of this whole undertaking. I was in lots of musical groups as a kid and recorded a lot. I've been building things on computers for years, and I love software and figuring things out. Nobody joins the choir to sing to their phone. And it's a really, I mean, even for me, it's a weird thing to do, to sing by yourself to your phone. And it's weird having to review it and hear yourself. It's, I think, daunting to know that what you turn in is going to end up on the internet, and Google never forgets anything. So I just want to take a minute to thank the choir, because this is not an easy thing to do. And the choir members who took this on, I think, are very brave, and a lot of the credit for our virtual choirs goes to them. And it's a lot of work. I mean, some people would do one or two takes. Some people spent hours doing take after take after take. And I'd get these emails that were like, at 1 a.m. of the day they were due, it's like, I just can't do anymore. This is the best I can do, please. And so, I appreciate what everybody did to participate and to spend all that time on it. I did a slide about submitting video files. It was challenging. The files are huge. And if people have, internet connectivity varies. So if you have bad internet or if your Wi-Fi signal is not great, it can be tough. And Dropbox ended up being a pretty good solution. So we have a 2 terabyte Dropbox, and it lets me make an upload link. I give that upload link to everybody in the choir packet. And when they click that upload link, it asks them for the file. They point that web page at the file, and God knows how much longer, 300 or 400 megabytes of video have been uploaded to my Dropbox. So that is singer recording, and I'll take a couple of questions if there are any about how the singers record themselves. But maybe there aren't any.
You mentioned the 2 terabyte Dropbox. Isn't after you do 40 of these things, isn't that not enough? What do you store all this stuff on?
I don't keep everything on the Dropbox. I have a gigantic old-fashioned spinning Rust Frisbee 8 terabyte drive that I keep, and I also back it all up to a cloud service. But it's not all the raw materials are not saved permanently on Dropbox.
Looks like we have a question from Tim.
Hey, Tim. I can't hear you. Oh.
Right. I had my my Yeti mic, one of the things I bought for my recordings, on mute, at Chris's suggestion and among others. And but I was just going to comment on the fact that you forgot to mention rubber bands, a step ladder, an O-light, and the microphone I just mentioned in your description of the tools that we use to do these recordings. Thanks.
Yeah, that's my bad for not getting, zip ties, double-sided tape. I don't even know what else. I haven't done it, but I would love to get a picture of everybody's recording setup, because my guess is some of them are ingenious. Yeah, good point, Tim.
Another question from Tom.
Oh, great.
I actually used an upside down on laundry basket for mine. I just want to echo what Chris said about you don't join a choir to sing into a phone. I thoroughly enjoy singing with a group of people and feel I do a reasonably good job. But I tell you, after I would record and I would listen to myself sing, not fun. It's like, I am not doing solos, Anyway, just wanted to add that. Thank you, Chris.
I've got something from Deb. Ben built a wood tower with movable components. Of course he did. That's awesome. Okay. All righty then. So now let's talk about putting it all together. So 300 megabyte files just arrived in my Dropbox. What happens? So the raw materials for doing the edit are singer files, the conductor and musician video files, the accompaniment audio, and then B-roll. I don't know if that's a term that people are familiar with or not, but B-roll is sort of supporting imagery and video that, to provide emotional tone or context or trying to think. So if you remember the overflowing virtual choir, there was lots of sort of escalating levels of moving water in that video. And so that's B-roll. So I got to pick that. And all of that's kind of, the B-roll particularly is all kind of driven by the creative plan. And the creative plan sort of breaks down into video and audio. Audio, what sound are we going for? Do we want really something very crisp? Do we want something that's a little more atmospheric with a lot more reverb? Lots of choices to make there. From the video side, kind of what emotional tone, what color palette, what kind of layout, what sort of animations would we be interested in? So, one of the things that's been really fun for me, Rip has been extremely supportive of this whole process and just vital in making it happen. And Rip has extremely well thought out input about the sound. And he has given, I mean, I wasn't really a sound mixer before this. I'd done a fair amount of video work. So I was kind of learning as I was going along on the sound side. And, that really only happened because Rip guided me through it. And had, he's got standards for how things should sound, because of course he does. The thing that was kind of fun was, I think, and it's largely because of the timing, we typically only had a week to put these together. And so he kind of let me run with whatever crazy video thing I wanted to do. He reeled me back in sometimes, but, I tend to do my best thinking when I'm falling asleep or driving. And so I would have some idea about, solstice song, we're going to have some guy walking across a glacier or whatever. So, and I would go out and find B-roll video for that. So anyway, that's the creative plan. And then for tools, it's really just my PC. As I mentioned, I built this sort of monstrous PC to play video games on. And then, as Ewan asked, I use a nonlinear video editing software suite called Adobe Premiere Pro to do the video layout and the animations and all that good stuff. And I use a digital audio workstation, or DAW, called FL Studio. And I did about the first 5 of these projects on Adobe Audition, which is obviously Adobe's bundled DAW that goes with Premiere Pro. And I realized that there were tools I wanted to use that it just didn't have. So I got FL Studio, and it has tools, particularly in the area of tuning, that are so perfect for what we do. So that's what I use now. Somebody sent me a question about computer specs, so I'm just going to run them really quickly. Beep, I'm a nerd. It's a Windows PC. It's got an 8-core, 36-thread processor, lots of RAM. One of the key things it has is an SSD, a RAM disk for the operating system, and a RAM disk for the workspace, basically the sandbox where I build these things. Because the files are so gigantic, and there's so many of them being accessed at one time, if you think about it, I have to be able to play 30 high-res videos at once to be able to see what I'm editing. And so disk access is critically important. So I use SSDs for that. I've got a fast graphics card. I've got an audio interface, 15-inch studio monitors, and good headphones. And I'll just show you, because somebody asked. So that's where the magic happens. I have to have 2 monitors. There's just too much going on in terms of juggling open directories and different tools and all that stuff. And the one piece that you might not recognize, if I can get to it, is that thing right there. That's called a Stream Deck, and it's basically 32 macro buttons that I can program to do anything my computer will do. And in this picture, this is sort of the default, which is the programs I use the most. There it is. So, word processing, a game, browsers, different stuff. I also create for each project a custom macro button layout that looks like this. So this is for Live Peace, and it's basically all the things I have to get to fast in order to work on Live Peace. So these are all files or directories that hold files and work files for that project. And I spend the better part of 4 weeks working on one project, and I don't want to have to dig through my hard drive every time I'm looking for things. So I make one of these layouts for my macro controller, and so I can just go boom, 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 open this, go. So it's a handy thing. Okay. So everything I'm about to describe happens on my PC. This is the overall virtual choir editing process. So on the order of 30 files come in from people's phones. I put them through a process I call the file cruncher, which basically transcodes, which means recodes those files into 2 other kinds of files, an uncompressed video file and an uncompressed audio file. And there are a bunch of reasons for this. Obviously, the fact that I'm working on audio in one program is part of it, and video in another program is part of it. But It's funny. Coming into this, I always assumed smaller files were easier to work with. With video, that's not the case. With video, you want to have uncompressed files because that way your program doesn't have to basically uncompress the file before it works on it. So what I do is I create an uncompressed version, which is gigantic. So if the file that I get from somebody's phone is 300 megabytes, the uncompressed video file from that will probably be 3 gigabytes. So these are gigantic, gigantic files. And then as you can see, I do the video layout in Premiere Pro, I do the audio mix in FL Studio, and then I bring those two back together into the final product, the final project. And this might be interesting. I do the audio first. And the reason that is because as soon as I have one audio file, I can work on it. I can, do gain staging, set the levels, do noise reduction, all the things I need to do. With video, I don't know what the layout is actually going to look like until I know how many videos I'm going to have. So I can't start video work until I know exactly how many videos are coming in. So people have asked me repeatedly, why do you split the files? That's one of the reasons. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what I do to individual singers' audio. I do the timing and I do the tuning. So that's really singing the right notes at the right times. It says auto and manual. Auto tuning is generally bringing notes to the assumed pitch that the program believes they should be singing. That is something that I can do quickly, and it's a batch process. Manual tuning happens when I need to change the note that someone is singing. And that happens too. Sometimes I make this mistake all the time, that you just, my mind wanders and I sing, a third when I should sing a fifth or whatever. So I have software, and this is actually one of the reasons why I switched to FL Studio. It's very easy for me to essentially re-sing a note and just move it to a different note. I could do a lot. I can change the amount of vibrato. I can add vibrato. I can reduce vibrato. If people glide to notes, I can get rid of the glide. That's actually something I do all the time. I glide. So there's a lot to do with tuning and timing. The timing, the beginning of notes is generally pretty good. There will be an issue with cutoffs because, again, people are recording by themselves. So it's just hard to get the cutoffs perfect because you're looking at the score, you're trying to watch the video of Rip conducting. It's just hard. Noise reduction is interesting. When we got into winter, suddenly I realized I had to do lots more noise reduction. It hadn't occurred to me. People's heating systems were on, and so I could, in many cases, hear their heating systems in the background just going. So there's, lots of noise reduction that has to happen. EQ, I try to put there's a lot of uses for EQ, de-essing, cutting boominess out of basses. There's all sorts of reasons to EQ. And then levels and compression need to be changed. If you think about it, when these files come in, they're being recorded at all different input volumes. And I need to have consistency across the volume of people's files. So I compress them, which basically just presses down the peak volume of somebody's recording so that I can get everybody at, let's say, negative 15 decibels, so that when I do a mix of all of those, it mixes into something that comes in around unity, which is 0 decibels, or sort of the top amount of volume that I want to have. So once I do everybody's individual file, then I get into audio mixing. I sync up the individual tracks. Again, I talked about how that happens by finding a spot and then syncing that spot across all the files. I make submixes. So everybody's file gets assigned to a submix. So all the tenors are on one submix, all the basses are in a submix, the altos, the sopranos. If there's a first and second soprano, I'll do 2 submixes. I'll do an instrumental submix. So there'll be a bunch of submixes, but that basically means that once I get the relative levels within a part right, so once I get, say, the sopranos sounding the way I want them, I can then slide one slider to set how much soprano is in the mix. And this gets to be interesting because on a typical project, we'll have 9 altos, 6 sopranos, and maybe 4, maybe 5 tenors, and probably 4 basses. So it's just, there are just more female voices, and I have to come up with ways to stage the gain so it's not, it comes out as a nice mix. And then obviously at the end of the mix, after I've got everything sort of the way I like it, I do dynamics. Obviously dynamics in the piece, if a particular part has a crescendo or a decrescendo in it, if a particular part is mezzo forte or forte or whatever, sometimes that gets covered. People will adhere to that, but it's really, really hard when you're singing by yourself to know what mezzo forte is or what piano is. So I do a lot of automation to try to put the dynamics that Rip wants, right? That Rip is conducting or that are in the score, to put those dynamics into the final digital product. And then the other thing is I just end up playing a lot of whack-a-mole at the end of the mix just to see what I missed, what's still hanging, where's that noise coming from? Just trying to find things and fix them so it sounds good. Audio mastering is what I do when the mix is done. So that's overall, how's the whole thing sound? How's the level of the whole thing? How's the EQ of the whole product? Is it boomy? Is it shrill? And then reverb, I make choices, and Rip actually makes choices, and I help him with that. How much reverberation do you want? Do you want it to sound like it's in a particular kind of room? Is it more lush? Is it more crisp? We'll do lots of versions to see sort of what Rip thinks is the best level of reverb or the best tone of reverb. So there's lots of review with Rip and adjustments. So this is actually what it looks like when I'm doing the audio. I'm not going to go too far into this, but sort of up at the top of the screen, you can see all the tracks. At the bottom, you can see the faders. And those faders will fly up and down because I'm automating them for different parts. It's really handy. And there are 30 files there, and we can only just happen to see 7 of them. All right, so let's talk about video editing. So for individual singers, I'm not doing a whole lot. It's scaling, which is how much zoomed in or zoomed out we are, how big they are in the frame. Framing, which is where they are, are they centered? Are we showing the same part of their, I try to do sort of a, what I would call a medium close-up. So it's like shoulders and up. And I like to have everybody sort of in the same position. I don't always get it right. And I'm also limited by how tightly people shoot themselves, how tightly they film themselves. So if they film really tight, I can't, there's nowhere for me to zoom out to. So they're just going to be that tight. I'll do a little color correction, brightness, contrast, depending if somebody's backlit or if it was dark in the room they were in. I wrote special circumstances. So a special circumstance might be we're all dancing in the video, and some people are exactly out of phase. So when everybody's supposed to be moving left, they're moving right. It's really easy to fix. I just flip their video 180 and they're in sync. Not hard to do. Video layout, similarly, I sync all the videos. I do it the same way. I actually sync the videos using sound because there's low res sound on those videos, and I do it the same way. I find a B and I tag it and sync them all up. And then I import the product of the audio mix into the project, and I get rid of all the individual audio that came with the videos. So now we're just working with the, finalized, hopefully perfected audio mix and the video that people send. I sync those up, and then it's a layout thing. I decide who goes where. And, I'll do it alphabetically. I'll do it so that people who are married are next to each other. I'll try to do it so that people who weren't near each other are near each other. I'll do it by parts. We do it all kinds of different ways. Then I add and sync B-roll, which is the sort of supporting imagery and video. And then I add any animations. So fades, people flying around, movement, zooms, all that kind of stuff gets added toward the end. And that's Adobe Premiere Pro. So you can see sort of the project coming together at the top right. Below that is a list of all the tracks, and then there's all kinds of technical stuff happening over there on the left. And then so I come up with a draft of it and I review it with Rip, and he tells me what needs to change. And we'll, we could do several iterations of that. Sometimes he just says, I love it. It really depends. And then I render the final version. I create thumbnail images for the social media stuff, and then I upload them to Dropbox and YouTube and send the links to the people who are running the worship service, and I do my victory dance. And that's how we make virtual choirs. And that's it. So I will take any and all questions now.
Chris, this is Dave Pollock.
Hey, Dave.
Kind of an obvious question is, the first time you did it, how long did it take? And the most recent time you did it, assuming they're pretty much the same work in both times, how long did it take you to do the last one?
I would conservatively, I thought about this a lot. I would conservatively say I spent 100 hours on the first one. And I think I can do one in about 20 hours all in now. And a lot of that is because I've templatized a ton of this stuff. Like, I don't have to figure it out anymore. I have like the file folders for a virtual choir project. I have a template saved. When I make a new project, I just drag it over and rename it, and that's all the folders I need. I have layouts for 32 singers, 30 singers, 28 singers, 20 singers, 16 singers, 9 singers, 4 singers, 5 singers. So I have those templates built already, and I don't use them exactly like the template every time, but it's very easy for me to make a layout with the number of singers I have. So that's all a lot faster. And then a ton of it is just getting to know everybody's voice. So when I did Hallelujah last month, that was one thing I really noticed, is that I didn't know, except for Deb and Ben, I didn't know anybody's voice. And so that was sort of a process of discovery, who kind of needs what. And that is something I've got figured out for our choir.
Well, you get an A for effort in all of this. My goodness, what a lot of hours to put in. Thank you so much.
It's fun.
Chris, what exactly is EQ?
Equalization. Okay, so sorry. Yeah, jargon. So the simplest version of it is on your stereo. If people still have stereos, there might be a bass knob and a treble knob. That is a 2-band EQ, low pitches and high pitches. When I work with EQ in one of these projects, I might be looking at 10 bands or 20 bands. So it's basically slicing up the frequency bands. And so one example of something I will very often do is I will roll the bottom end off the male voices, because many male voices get boomy, including mine. And it's not so much that they're so low, it's just that for whatever reason, the sort of geometry of men's vocal cords will create a lot of sort of muddy low end, and I'll just roll it off with EQ. So it's just gone, and you get sort of crisp. It's the same pitch. You perceive the same pitch, but it's just not boomy. That's just one example.
We had a lot of hands up. I think Rip was next.
Oh, him.
Hi, Chris. Of course, I'm so glad you're doing this program, because I don't think people really could grasp just how much effort you put into this, and you've done an amazing job. The one thing I wanted to say to everybody is, when Chris, well, there's two things that happen. The first thing he'll send me is an audio mix that he's worked really hard on, and we'll go back and forth a little bit about timing and tuning or just various things that need adjusting. But Chris, I think will agree that almost once he sends the final mix, I tear up and cry, because with the pandemic, it's been heartbreaking for all of us, but it's been heartbreaking for me as a choir director not to hear everybody. And so when he finally comes up with this beautiful mix, I'm literally crying. And then when he puts the video in, I'm pretty much every time I go, Chris, you made me cry again. So I just wanted to bring that up.
That's my goal. That's my goal in every single one of these. If I can't make Rip cry, I'm not happy.
A few general or specific questions. One was, which of our anthems was the most work. I mean, once you sort of had things down, which had so many moving parts that it was hard. And also, is it different working with the kids choir and the kids solos?
Okay. The anthem that actually took the most work was Live Peace, because I had this goofy idea that I was going to animate all the lyrics separately, if you remember that video. And it was like a 15-second idea that turned into hours and hours of work, just because I had to slice it all up and get it all timed. Like every single word in that video is essentially another video that I have to sync.
Oh my gosh.
So that was the one that took the most. I was actually really happy with the way it turned out, but it was a lot of work. Working with the kids is really fun and really interesting. So I do more manual tuning with them than I do with the adult choir, just to get the right pitches in the right place. But I think it's totally worth it. I mean, they're really fun to work with, and there's some really talented kids. That thing Ella did for was it last week or 2 weeks ago? That I thought that was beautiful. And so it's really fun to see, rising singers sort of getting their feet under them. It's really great.
Oh, thank you. They're phenomenal.
Looks like it's me. So I'm struck by the fact that this is a whole lot of technical ability and expertise, and a whole lot of creative juice. Not to mention needing a really close working relationship between you and Rip. I am wondering if you would be comfortable talking about the piece that you think really has worked the best in reflection. I know it's like saying, which one of your children do you love the best? And if
which
you
piece?
have, yes, which piece? And if you have worked on one where you had an idea and you decided in the end, well, that was worth trying, but I don't think that I want to do that again.
Yeah. And they're all my babies. It's really hard. Well, I mean, if I see somebody on an elevator, if I'm ever on an elevator again, and they say, what should I listen to? I would say, listen to Overflowing, the Brian Tate piece. I really love that piece. I think we sound great. Beth sang it just stunning solo, and the B-roll and everything came together really nicely. Again, there are things I like about all of them. Even the ones I don't like, there are components of them that I think are kind of fun, and I sort of make little hoops to jump through for myself.